Emma Rodriguez sat at the small wooden table in their cramped apartment, carefully forming each letter with her purple crayon. At 8 years old, she believed in magic with the pure faith that only children possess. Her grandmother Maria had told her stories of creatures that lived in the shadows, beings who could help those in desperate need. Tonight, as rain drummed against their thin walls and her mother Sarah cried softly in the next room, Emma decided to write the most important letter of her life. "Dear Vampire King," she began, her tongue poking out in concentration. "My name is Emma and I am 8 years old. We need a home really bad. Mama cries every night because we might have to live in our car again. I heard Grandma Maria say that vampires are real and they help people sometimes. Please help us find a home. I promise I will be good and help take care of it. Love, Emma Rodriguez. P.S. I left some cookies for you by the window." Emma folded the letter carefully and placed it on the windowsill next to a small plate of store-brand cookies. She had saved them from her school lunch, even though she was still hungry. Magic required sacrifice, Grandma Maria always said. The apartment building where they lived was scheduled for demolition in 2 weeks. Sarah Rodriguez, Emma's mother, worked 3 part-time jobs but still couldn't afford the deposit for a new place. Since Emma's father David had died in a construction accident 2 years ago, money had been tighter than bark on a tree. The small life insurance payout had run out months ago, spent on medical bills and basic necessities. Sarah worked mornings at a local diner, afternoons cleaning offices, and evenings stocking shelves at a grocery store. Emma spent most of her time with Mrs. Chen, an elderly neighbor who watched several children for families who couldn't afford proper daycare. Mrs. Chen was kind, but her own apartment was barely large enough for herself, let alone taking in a mother and daughter permanently. That night, Emma pressed her face against the cold window glass, watching for any sign of movement in the darkness. She had read every book about vampires in the school library, even the ones meant for older kids. She knew they could turn into bats, that they were very strong, and that some of them were good. Surely a vampire king would be powerful enough to help them find a home. The next morning, Sarah found the letter and the empty plate on the windowsill. Emma was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her sleeping bag, staring at the spot where her cookies had been. "Mama, look. The cookies are gone." Emma pointed excitedly at the empty plate. "That means he got my letter." Sarah's heart broke a little more. She knelt down beside her daughter, pulling her close. "Baby, maybe it was just mice or no, Mama. It was him. I know it was." Emma's brown eyes were bright with certainty. "He's going to help us. You'll see." Sarah didn't have the heart to crush her daughter's hope. Hope was about the only thing they had left. She had applied for housing assistance months ago but was still on a waiting list that seemed to stretch into infinity. Every apartment they looked at required first and last month's rent plus a security deposit, money they simply didn't have. At work that day, Sarah's manager at the diner, Jim Patterson, noticed she seemed more distracted than usual. She had burned 2 orders of toast and forgotten to refill the coffee station twice. "Everything okay, Sarah?" Jim asked during her break. He was a good man, understanding about her situation, but the diner was struggling too. He couldn't afford to keep employees who weren't performing. "We have to be out of our apartment in less than 2 weeks, Sarah admitted, stirring sugar into her coffee with shaking hands. "I don't know what we're going to do. Emma's got it in her head that some vampire king is going to save us." She laughed, but it came out hollow and desperate. Jim frowned thoughtfully. He had heard stranger things in his 50 years of life. "You know, there's this guy who comes in here sometimes. Adrian Blackwood. Real quiet, always orders black coffee and sits in the corner booth. Pays with cash, leaves big tips. There's something different about him. Never eats food, just coffee. And I swear I've never seen him during daylight hours." Sarah looked up from her coffee. "What are you getting at, Jim?" "Probably nothing. But he was asking about you last week. Said he'd noticed you working hard, wondered if you had family. I didn't think much of it at the time, but..." Jim shrugged. "Like I said, probably nothing. But, if I were you, and I was desperate enough to believe in vampires, I might pay attention to who's been paying attention to me. That evening, Sarah walked home through the October darkness, Jim's words echoing in her mind. She had noticed the man he was talking about, tall, pale, with dark hair and the most unusual gray eyes she had ever seen. He always wore expensive-looking clothes and had an old-fashioned way of speaking, like he was from another time. She had served him coffee dozens of times, and he was always polite, always left a $20 tip on a $2 order. When she got home, Emma was waiting by the window again, another letter in her hands. "I wrote him again, Mama. To say thank you for taking the cookies. Mrs. Chen helped me spell grateful right." Emma held up the paper proudly. "And I told him we only have 13 more days." Sarah sat down beside her daughter, looking out at the dark street below. Somewhere out there, people were living in warm homes with full refrigerators and secure leases. Somewhere out there, a man with gray eyes drank black coffee and left generous tips. And, somewhere in Emma's beautiful imagination, a vampire king was preparing to answer a little girl's desperate prayer. "What do you think he looks like, baby?" Sarah asked softly. Emma closed her eyes, thinking hard. "Tall. With a long coat like in the movies. But, not scary. Kind eyes. And, maybe he's lonely too, just like us." Grandma Maria said that sometimes the people who help others the most are the ones who understand being sad. Sarah kissed the top of Emma's head, tasting salt from her own tears. "I think you might be right about that." As they prepared for bed on their makeshift arrangements in the living room, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not in a frightening way, but in a protective way, like a guardian she couldn't quite see. When she looked out the window before drawing the curtains, she thought she saw a tall figure standing across the street under the broken streetlight. But, when she blinked, the shadow was gone. That night, Emma dreamed of a castle made of moonlight and silver, where no child ever went hungry and no mother ever cried herself to sleep. In her dream, a kind voice promised that help was coming, that she just needed to be brave for a little while longer. When she woke up, there was a single white rose on the windowsill, fresh and perfect despite the October cold. Sarah found the rose when she went to make coffee with their last few grounds. She picked it up with trembling fingers, inhaling its impossible fragrance. Roses didn't bloom in October. Roses didn't appear overnight on third-story windowsills. But, sometimes, when hope was all you had left, impossible things happened. "Mama." Emma bounced out of her sleeping bag. "He left me a flower. That means he got my second letter too." Sarah looked at her daughter's radiant face, then, at the rose in her hand. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, miracles still existed in the world. Maybe love and kindness could take forms she had never imagined. And, maybe, when an 8-year-old girl wrote a letter asking for help, the universe found a way to answer. 12 days left until eviction. But, now, somehow, Sarah felt like they might not be facing it alone. 3 days passed, and Emma's faith never wavered. Each morning brought a new gift on the windowsill, a small bag of her favorite strawberry candy, a picture book about castles, a soft scarf that smelled like midnight rain. Sarah began to feel like she was living in a dream, watching her daughter's joy bloom despite their dire circumstances. On the 4th morning, Sarah was rushing to get ready for her early shift when she heard Emma gasp from the kitchen. "Mama! Mama, come quick! He wrote me back." Sarah nearly dropped her coffee mug as she hurried over. There, on cream-colored paper with elegant handwriting, was a letter addressed to Emma in flowing script that looked like it belonged in a museum. "My dear Emma," Sarah read aloud, her voice catching slightly. "Your letters have touched my heart more than you could know. A home is not merely walls and a roof, but a place where love lives safely. I would be honored to help you and your mother find such a place. Tonight, when the moon is highest, I will come to speak with you both. Do not be afraid. I am a friend who has been watching over you with great care. Until tonight, Adrian." Emma clapped her hands together, dancing around their small kitchen. "I knew it. I knew he was real. Mama, the Vampire King has a name. Adrian." Sarah stared at the letter, her mind racing. "Adrian. The same name Jim had mentioned, the man with gray eyes who drank black coffee and never came during daylight. Her rational mind screamed that this was impossible, that vampires were fiction, that someone was playing an elaborate joke. But her heart, worn down by months of struggle, whispered that maybe magic was real after all. "Emma, baby, we need to talk about this." Sarah knelt down to her daughter's level. "What if this man isn't what you think he is? What if he's just a regular person?" Emma's face grew serious beyond her years. "Would that be bad, Mama? If he's just a person who wants to help us?" Sarah realized her daughter was right. Whether Adrian was a vampire, a wealthy philanthropist, or simply a kind stranger, his intentions seemed genuine. The gifts had been innocent, the letter respectful. And they were desperate enough that even help from an unusual source was still help. That evening, Sarah called in sick to her night shift at the grocery store. She and Emma spent the afternoon cleaning their small apartment and preparing for their mysterious visitor. Emma insisted on baking cookies with their last box of mix, determined to offer proper hospitality to their benefactor. As darkness fell, they sat together on their second-hand couch, Emma in her best dress, a hand-me-down from Mrs. Chen's granddaughter, and Sarah in the only outfit she owned that didn't smell like diner grease or cleaning supplies. They watched the clock tick toward midnight, Emma's excitement growing with each passing minute. At exactly midnight, there was a soft knock at their door. Sarah's heart pounded as she looked through the peephole. Standing in the dim hallway was a tall man in an elegant dark coat, holding a bouquet of white roses. He was pale and handsome in an old-fashioned way, with dark hair and those unforgettable gray eyes that seemed to hold centuries of kindness. "Emma, stay behind me," Sarah whispered, though her daughter was already peeking around her legs. Sarah opened the door slowly, leaving the chain lock attached. "Adrian?" He inclined his head gracefully. "Mrs. Rodriguez." "Miss Emma. Thank you for agreeing to see me." His voice was deep and cultured, with the faintest trace of an accent Sarah couldn't place. "I hope I may enter and speak with you both?" Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Mama, you have to invite him in." "That's how it works with vampires." Adrian's lips curved in a gentle smile. "Your daughter is quite well read. But I would never presume to enter without your explicit permission, regardless of any folkloric requirements." Sarah studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or threat. What she saw instead was profound loneliness, the kind that came from carrying heavy burdens for a very long time. Against her better judgment, she unlatched the chain and opened the door wide. "Please, come in." Adrian stepped across the threshold, and Sarah noticed he moved with an unusual grace, as if he was floating rather than walking. He handed her the roses, and she was surprised by how cold his fingers were despite the mild October evening. "These are for you, Mrs. Rodriguez. And these," he pulled a small wrapped package from his coat, "are for the brave young lady who wrote to me." Emma accepted the gift with reverent hands, unwrapping it to reveal a music box in the shape of a castle. When she wound it up, it played a haunting melody she had never heard before, and tiny figures danced in the windows. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed. "Thank you, Mr. Adrian. Are you really the Vampire King?" Adrian settled into the chair Sarah offered, though she noticed he declined her offer of coffee or water. He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "I am someone who has lived a very long time, Emma. Long enough to see many families struggle as yours is struggling now. Long enough to know that when a child is brave enough to ask for help, the universe conspires to provide it." He looked directly at Sarah. "I am wealthy beyond what I could ever spend in a dozen lifetimes. I own properties throughout the city, including a house that has been empty for far too long." Sarah leaned forward, hardly daring to hope. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that tomorrow evening, if you are willing, I would like to show you a home. A real home, with a garden for Emma and a study where she can do her homework, with neighbors who will watch out for her and schools that will challenge her brilliant mind." Adrian's eyes were earnest. "I ask nothing in return except that you allow me to help, and that perhaps Emma might occasionally write me letters about her adventures in her new life." Emma launched herself off the couch and hugged Adrian around the waist. Sarah was shocked when he stiffened, as if physical affection was something he had forgotten how to receive. Thank you, Emma said into his coat. I knew you would help us. I told Mama you were good. Adrian's expression softened as he carefully patted Emma's head. You were right to believe, little one. Hope is the most powerful magic in any realm. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. I don't understand why you're doing this for us. You don't even know us. Adrian gently disentangled himself from Emma's hug and stood, smoothing down his coat. I have observed you for months, Mrs. Rodriguez. I have seen you work 3 jobs to provide for your daughter. I have watched you sacrifice your own meals so she could eat. I have witnessed your strength, your devotion, your grace under impossible pressure. He paused, looking out their window at the night sky. I know what it is to lose everything, to face the world alone. I know what it means to need sanctuary. If I have the power to provide that for others, how could I choose not to? Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What's the catch? Nobody just gives away houses. The house needs a family to make it alive again, Adrian said simply. It has been empty since I lost someone very dear to me. Her name was Catherine, and she loved children, loved families. She always said our home was too quiet, too sad. I think she would be pleased to know that laughter will fill those rooms again. Emma tugged on Adrian's coat sleeve. Is Catherine in heaven now? Adrian's face grew distant. She is at peace, yes. But she left me with a purpose, to remember that love is meant to be shared, that wealth means nothing if it doesn't ease suffering, that even those who live in darkness can choose to create light. They talked for another hour, Adrian explaining that he owned a beautiful Victorian house in a safe neighborhood across town. It had been fully furnished and maintained, just waiting for the right family. He would handle all the legal paperwork, all the utilities, all the details. Their only responsibility would be to move in and make it home. As he prepared to leave, Adrian handed Sarah an elegant business card with just his name and a phone number printed in silver lettering. Call me tomorrow evening after sunset, he said. I will arrange for you to see the house. And, Mrs. Rodriguez? He paused at the door. Some would say that believing in magic is foolish. But, I have learned that magic is simply love taking action in ways that seem impossible. Your daughter's faith called to something in me that I thought was long dead. In saving you, perhaps she has saved me as well. After he left, Sarah and Emma sat in their tiny apartment, staring at the music box and the roses and the business card that proved their midnight visitor had been real. Mama, Emma said sleepily as they prepared for bed, I think Mr. Adrian is lonely like we were lonely. Maybe that's why the magic worked. Because we all needed each other. Sarah tucked her daughter into her sleeping bag, marveling at the wisdom hidden in such a small person. Maybe you're right, baby. Maybe that's how the best magic works. That night, for the first time in months, Sarah fell asleep without crying. And Emma dreamed not of castles in the sky, but of a real house with a real garden where she could plant flowers and invite Mr. Adrian for tea, where her mama could rest and smile again, where they could finally, truly, be home. 10 days until eviction. But Sarah had a feeling they wouldn't be needing those 10 days after all. The next evening, Sarah called the number on Adrian's card with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring, his cultured voice warm with anticipation. Mrs. Rodriguez. I have been hoping you would call. Are you ready to see your new home? Within an hour, a sleek black car pulled up outside their apartment building. Adrian emerged from the driver's seat, moving with that same ethereal grace Sarah had noticed the night before. Emma pressed her face against the window, waving enthusiastically. The drive took them across town to a neighborhood Sarah had only seen in magazines. Tree-lined streets wound past elegant houses with manicured lawns and gardens that looked like works of art. Children's bicycles sat in driveways, and warm light spilled from windows where families gathered for dinner. This is it, Adrian said softly as they pulled into the driveway of a magnificent Victorian house painted in soft blues and whites. It had a wraparound porch, bay windows that caught the last light of sunset, and a garden that even in October still bloomed with late-season flowers. Emma's mouth fell open. It looks like the house from my dreams. Adrian smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. Then, perhaps it was meant to be yours all along. He led them up the front steps, producing an ornate key from his coat pocket. The front door opened onto a foyer with gleaming hardwood floors and a staircase that curved gracefully to the second floor. Everything was perfectly maintained, from the antique furniture to the fresh flowers in crystal vases. "The kitchen has been completely updated," Adrian said, guiding them through rooms that felt like something from a fairy tale. "The master bedroom overlooks the garden, and, Emma, I thought you might like this room." He opened a door to reveal a child's dream bedroom, pale pink walls with hand-painted flowers, a canopy bed with soft white curtains, built-in bookshelves already filled with classics, and a window seat overlooking a yard with an old oak tree perfect for climbing. Emma ran to the window, then to the bed, then to the bookshelf, touching everything with wonder. "Mama, look! There's even a desk for homework and a reading chair and, oh!" She had discovered a small door in the wall that opened to reveal a playhouse-sized room behind it. "My own secret hideaway." Sarah stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "Adrian, this is too much. This is a mansion we could never afford." "The house has been empty for 3 years," Adrian said quietly. "Since Catherine passed away. I have maintained it, hoping one day it would know laughter again. There is no rent, no mortgage. I simply ask that you care for it as if it were your own, because in every way that matters, it will be." They spent 2 hours exploring the house. There was a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a cozy living room with a fireplace, a dining room with a chandelier that cast rainbow prisms on the walls when the light hit it just right. The backyard had fruit trees, a vegetable garden ready for next spring's planting, and a swing hanging from the old oak tree. "I don't understand," Sarah said as they sat in the kitchen. Emma curled up in Adrian's lap as he showed her how the music box he had given her played different melodies depending on which key you owned. "Why us? Why this?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his pale hands gentle as he helped Emma work the tiny mechanism. "Catherine and I wanted children," he said finally. "For decades, we tried. We had this house prepared, these rooms ready, these dreams carefully tended. But it was not meant to be for us." He looked up at Sarah, his gray eyes bright with unshed tears. "When I read Emma's letter, when I saw her faith, her love for you, her determination to care for the home she asked for, I realized Catherine had found a way to give me the family we always wanted. Just not in the way we expected." Emma looked up at him with serious brown eyes. "Are you sad that Catherine went to heaven?" "Yes, little one. But, seeing you here, seeing your mother smile, I think perhaps I am becoming less sad and more grateful. Catherine always said that love doesn't end when someone goes away. It just finds new ways to grow." Over the next week, Adrian arranged everything with efficient grace that bordered on the supernatural. Lawyers handled the paperwork, making Sarah the official caretaker of the property with legal protections that ensured she and Emma could never be forced to leave. Moving trucks appeared to transport their few possessions, though they were dwarfed by the beautiful furnishings already in place. Mrs. Chen cried when they said goodbye, but she was thrilled for them. Jim at the diner was amazed when Sarah gave her notice, but he understood when she explained she wanted to focus on the online college courses Adrian was helping her pay for. "That man of yours is something special," Jim said as he handed her a final paycheck with a generous bonus. "Vampire or not, he's got a good heart." Emma started at the local elementary school, where she quickly made friends with children who lived in the same wonderful neighborhood. Her teacher, Mrs. Williams, was impressed by her intelligence and creativity, and recommended her for the gifted program. Adrian visited them regularly, always after sunset, bringing books for Emma and small gifts that showed he was paying attention to their new life. A microscope when Emma expressed interest in science. Art supplies when Sarah mentioned wanting to try painting again. Warm coats when the weather turned cold. He never intruded on their daily routine, but he was always there when they needed him. When Emma had nightmares about losing their new home, he sat by her bed and told her stories about brave princesses who saved kingdoms with kindness. When Sarah struggled with self-doubt about deserving such good fortune, he reminded her that love was not about worthiness but about grace. One evening in December, as they decorated the most beautiful Christmas tree Emma had ever seen, she asked the question that had been building in her young mind. "Mr. Adrian, are you really a vampire?" Adrian paused in hanging an ornament, a crystal angel that caught the firelight. Sarah held her breath, realizing she had never actually received a direct answer to this question. I am someone who has lived a very long time, Adrian said carefully. Someone who needs very little sleep, who prefers the nighttime hours, who finds sustenance in ways that might seem unusual to others. He knelt down to Emma's level. But, more importantly, I am someone who believes in magic, who has learned that family is not always about blood, and who knows that the most powerful force in any realm is a child's unwavering faith and love. Emma nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense to her. So you're not exactly a vampire, but you're not exactly not a vampire either. That is perhaps the wisest way to put it. And you're our family now? Adrian's breath caught. If you will have me, yes. I would be honored to be your family. Emma threw her arms around him, and this time Adrian didn't hesitate to hold her close. I love you, Mr. Adrian. You're the best vampire king ever. And you, my dear Emma, are the bravest princess who ever wrote a letter asking for magic to be real. That Christmas morning, Sarah woke up in her beautiful bedroom, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked a garden where Emma was already playing in fresh snow. Downstairs, she found Adrian in the kitchen, somehow looking elegant even while flipping pancakes and brewing coffee that smelled like heaven. Merry Christmas, he said softly, handing her a cup of the perfect coffee she had ever tasted. I hope you don't mind that I started breakfast. Emma was awake before dawn, and I wanted to let you sleep. Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully, marveling at how natural this felt, how right. Adrian, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. He nodded, his expression serious. Are you immortal? Are you going to watch us grow old and die while you stay the same? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, stirring pancakes that smelled like childhood dreams. I have lived a very long time, Sarah. Long enough to know that all things change, that all seasons pass, that all stories have endings. He looked at her with eyes that held infinite tenderness. But I have also learned that love creates its own kind of immortality. The time I have with you and Emma, however long or short, will live in my heart forever. And, perhaps, in teaching me to love again, you have given me something more precious than eternal life, the chance to live fully in each moment I am given. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy. So we're going to be okay? All of us? More than okay, Adrian promised, pulling her into his arms as Emma's laughter echoed from the garden. We are going to be home. Years later, when Emma Rodriguez Blackwood graduated valedictorian from high school, when Sarah earned her master's degree in education, when their family grew to include friends and neighbors and chosen relatives who gathered around their table for holidays and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday dinners, people would ask them about their unusual story. Emma, now a confident young woman with her mother's warm heart and Adrian's quiet wisdom, would smile and say, sometimes magic is real. Sometimes when you believe hard enough in love, the universe finds a way to answer. And sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, the ones who show up when you need them most. Adrian never aged, though he learned to wear glasses and let worry lines show around his eyes when the situation called for it. He walked Emma down the aisle at her wedding, danced at Sarah's second wedding to a kind widower named Michael who worked at the library and never asked too many questions about his wife's mysterious first benefactor who had become like a brother to him. He was there for graduations and birthdays, for skinned knees and broken hearts, for every Christmas morning and quiet Sunday afternoon. He was there when Emma's own children started writing letters to the magic they hoped lived in the world, and he made sure those letters were always answered in ways that seemed impossible but felt like love. And sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet and the family was sleeping safely in their beds, Adrian would sit by the window where a little girl had once placed cookies and a desperate plea for help. He would think of Catherine, who had somehow orchestrated this miracle from beyond, and he would whisper thank you to the stars. Because sometimes, when an 8-year-old girl writes a letter asking for a home, and a lonely immortal remembers what it means to love, magic happens. The best kind of magic, the kind that builds families, creates belonging, and proves that hope is always, always worth believing in. Emma's letter had asked for a home. What she got was so much more. What they all got was the rarest treasure of all, a love that transcended the ordinary limits of blood and time and possibility, a love that proved family was not about who you were born to, but about who chose to stay. And they all lived happily, if not quite ever after, then, certainly for all the moments that mattered most.